Hello and welcome, Star Wars fans, to this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks, a show where we debate takes so hot that they'd melt a planet with twin suns. My name is Brody, and I'm joined by my co-host Amanda tonight as we attempt to discover what story is truly the best from a galaxy far, far away. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing ranks and hot takes from the Clone Wars Season 1, Episodes 1 through 4. By the end of this episode, we'll have a definitive answer on where these pieces of Star Wars content rank amongst the rest. Kind of starting to usher in a new era for this show.
Yeah.
We've had a few different co-hosts in our time. We've had Tim, Charlie.
We should have had like an in memoriam planned,
Yeah.
like I will remember you.
Okay, that's how we know we're gonna be fine, because that was so in sync.
Yeah.
Crazy. I am so all right. We're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay. We had a meeting yesterday. We're like, where's the future of the show going? Like, I don't know.
In the tank.
But you know what? We're in the tank together.
Yeah.
In sync at that.
Yeah.
In sync. So bye to all the other stuff. This show still exists.
Yeah, and last week we had like our goodbye episode with Christian.
Yeah.
So we're going to bleep out his name, and so that way it doesn't confuse our new listeners. No, but we didn't necessarily reveal what we were going to be reviewing next because we weren't sure with Ahsoka coming up in the next month.
Yeah.
And we decided to go along with season 1 of the Clone Wars.
Wow, we finally got here.
We're gonna be imagine saying that when we get to season 7, because it's gonna be a while
when we're 90.
Yeah, but also we were talking about how with the writer's strike going on, perhaps we can't anticipate that Skeleton Crew and some of those other projects will come out on time, so there might be a dry spell within the next year of Star Wars content. So
we'll finally catch up.
Yeah, maybe Clone Wars we'll just bust right through it.
How many years do you think it's going to take for us to get to Rebels?
I would love to get to Rebels before 2030.
I love that that's a goal.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, by the next decade, hopefully.
I feel like, wow, we finally did 2 seasons.
I'll have gray hairs and
finally
we're talking about my favorite Star Wars.
Yeah, and by that point, no one likes Star Wars anymore. It's just we're just doing it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's par for the course. So what happened? We're finally in Clone Wars. What happened in these 4 episodes for the folks that don't remember?
Right. So taking us back to 2008 when these episodes first came out. The first episode is kind of a standalone. So Jedi Master Yoda is on a secret mission to forge a treaty with the king of the strategic system of Toydaria when his ship is ambushed by Count Dooku. Yoda and 3 clone troopers must face off against Count Dooku's dreaded assassin, Ventress, and her massive droid army to prove the Jedi are strong enough to protect the king and his people from the forces of war. So there was that episode. Do we want to talk about that one first, and then the next 3 are sort of its own arc?
Yeah, let's just talk about that episode real quick.
Okay.
Let's just
my first impression was kind of whiplash, because you're just really thrown into it, no context. And to be fair, as someone who has already seen the series, it feels like Clone Wars. That's literally the recipe for a Clone Wars episode. But it's just weird that we're thrown in, and Yoda is our main character and sort of our grounding character that we all know from Star Wars, but otherwise it's entirely new.
Yeah.
I was shocked that Asajj Ventress is in episode 1, which mommy, but she is one of my favorite characters in this whole series.
Why?
And well, I think we're all going to go on that journey together and see why.
Okay.
She's just a badass. And I've listened to the audiobook, Dooku Jedi Lost, that kind of, and his relationship with Asajj as one of his apprentices, and her story with the Night Sisters is some of my favorite plot points in the Clone Wars. So I'm really excited to go into that. But what a big deal to get the season 1, episode 1 feature.
Yeah.
She's the feature baddie.
Yeah, I mean, for folks like myself, the hook was kind of that, because if you grew up and you did watch those the Clone Wars animated like shorts, that was like done by the same group who did Samurai Jack, and like you already knew about her as a character, and she was just lethal in that show. So you knew going in like, oh, okay, like we're in for something here.
See, I still have not seen what I think is called the micro series.
Yep, yep.
But that came out between 2003 and 2005, which is interesting that they would space it out so long, knowing how short and small it is. But that also brings me to like the technical aspects of this,
Yeah.
which in my comments I just wrote rough.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Like, why did they switch art styles? Because that Samurai Jack, like
Yeah.
2D style, is so cool.
Yeah.
And 3D feels a lot clunkier. It kind of reminds me of the first Toy Story, where
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought that for all of these episodes. And to be fair, like Lucasfilm had never done anything like this, and at the time, what year was this even released? Like 2010 or something?
2008.
2008? Oh, I thought that's when the movie came out. I didn't know this came out same year. Yeah, so I mean, for '08, it's not the worst. Obviously, it's not Pixar doing it, and they were trying to get a bunch of content out there. For me, a lot of movement seemed robotic and very clearly rigged by what would now be considered like amateurs.
Oh, yeah.
And so it did take me out of it for sure. But at the same point, I try to take off my 2023 lens and go back 15 years and say, how would this compare? But, it would still feel like a TV show on a
Mhm.
TV show budget, considering Finding Nemo had come out 5 years, 6 years before, and there were other films and shows that had done a better job.
Yeah.
So, this, I believe, was done on Cartoon Network at the time.
Yes.
And George Lucas wanted to explore the TV format for like how would this, this medium work for Star Wars, because now we can explore all these other stories we've wanted to tell that we couldn't before, and introduce new characters and dive deeper into the lore. So kudos to them for doing it. I think, yeah, this was also done. Same with the micro series on Cartoon Network. My question for you is, when did you actually start watching it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know a lot of Star Wars fans that love the Clone Wars grew up watching it, but in 2008, I was in like high school. So I wasn't really Jersey Shore was a little bit more my thing, and
Oh
Clone Wars
no.
was not
No.
necessarily in that same circle. I was very much an MTV VH1 Fuse
Are
type of
those
girl.
all things anymore?
Yeah, I think so.
That's wild. All right, so let's dive into that for a second, because Christian's not here anymore to keep us in our reign. So your family, you're from Jersey. You lived there a while.
I am from Nebraska. I have
Okay.
family in Jersey, and I've done like extended vacations in Jersey, like for summers at a time. So
Now, what I've been there many times myself too. The Jersey Shore folks did not seem to be popular with New
No.
Jersey residents.
No.
So why were you into I'm trying to, as someone who's you're a deep thinker, you're fine, you're a critic of Star Wars,
But
and
sometimes I just want something
trashy.
It's like those green caramel apple suckers.
Yeah.
Where they like stick to the roof of your mouth and you can feel them like rotting your teeth like in time, but you're like, dang, this is so tasty.
But right now,
yeah. So I also don't have a lot of drama in my like personal life, so it's kind of nice to outsource it from reality TV.
You know how many people would listen to this and be like, wait, you have no drama in your life, so you actively look for it.
I'm like,
television.
it's nice. It's really validating to see that, like, wow,
Yeah.
nobody I know has that much of a problem with anything, But back to your point, I did not watch Clone Wars when it was coming out, so my husband and I sat down and started watching it at the start of the pandemic. So that was sort of
Okay.
like worked out perfectly, because what else were we gonna do?
All that content.
Yeah, we had tried to start season 1 before the pandemic a while ago, and getting through like the first like maybe 8 episodes, we were like, oh, I could kind of go without watching this ever again.
Yeah. Yep.
But we really committed to it. And I'm glad we did.
Yeah.
Because that was also when season 7 was being promoted, that it was going to be coming out. So it was going to get like sort of a proper conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And that buzz also got us to like rework it into our watching schedule. What about
That's
you?
really interesting. No, I started in 2014, and I remember I, got my own place and was in my own apartment and couldn't be judged by roommates for
Yeah.
watching this kid's show because I knew some like diehard Star Wars fans. But in 2014, before Force Awakens, if you knew any diehard Star Wars fans, at least me, like I still wasn't public about it. Because at that time in 2014, there was like the prequels, and if you liked the prequels, you were like a child,
An idiot.
Yeah, huge nerd. No one is allowed to like the prequels, kind of thing. And I remember going on the internet and learning more and more about Force Awakens, being so hyped for it that summer. And I was like, okay, like I remember I repurchased Star Wars Bounty Hunter on GameCube, played that, and started watching the Clone Wars. But then life hit, and I think within the first season or two, I was like, I don't really care. Actually, it's just, Spurs had won the championship that summer. I got other interest, and Star Wars just fell to the wayside until The Force Awakens came out. It took over the world by storm again, and I never watched it again until the pandemic. I heard there was a season 7 coming out. I'm like, okay, I need to actually go through this. So I spent the pandemic going through Star Wars, or the Clone Wars, Star Trek: The Next Generation, and Star Trek: Deep Space Nine.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a lot to get through. I'm like, this is the time of my life I can get through this much content. And yeah, it was all of which were extremely rewarding.
Yeah. But mind you, this show came out when TV shows used to be like 24 episodes long, which seems like a bygone era because really TV shows nowadays are 10 episodes.
Yep.
Barely. Yep. Mandalorian's 8. Like, whoa.
34-minute
so
episodes.
Getting through this is going to be we're going to feel like Lewis and Clark.
Yeah.
Like traversing through some good, some not so good.
Yeah, and this episode is one of those that's not so good.
It isn't. What did we rank it?
Overall, we gave it a 54.9%.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like,
again, so as we just said, there's a lot of content that we're going to be going through here, and not all of it's going to be.
And let's also put our hats back on here. The intended audience at this point in time is kids,
children.
They're not trying to tell this deep story to really captivate audiences. That like, and I mean, the thing is, like, even some kids stories like have really good hooks, like Finding Nemo and stuff. But this is pretty simple. Like, we're introduced. All right, the Clone Wars is happening. There is this, where the planet Tridaria, whatever, they're deciding, are we going to be a separatist planet or fall in line with the Republic? And it all came down to who can better defend us.
Yeah.
And it's funny that they're like, instead of taking an average Jedi, they took Yoda.
Yeah.
as for their sample size of data, but that's its own thing. Yoda's
kind of like wacky in this episode.
Yeah, and I like that.
Which is kind of takes me back to the original trilogy.
Yep.
Him being just kind of like goofy, ha ha ha, and like he reads all those clones. I do really love the scene when they go into like this cave or something to hide out, and he asks the clones to take off their helmets so he can see their faces, and they're like, "Why do you need to see our faces? We all look the same." And he was like, "The Force is in all of you, even if you don't realize it, and each of you brings something different." And then he also reads them to filth in that moment. He's like, "You think you're a hot shot, but actually your strengths are here," and all this stuff. So that was kind of cool, very like sage wise master of him. But he is like a little kind of kooky, which I was like, yeah. I was like, all right, this is a kids show. But again, it feels a little much of a jolt, which is why I kind of pulled the story down, that we're just like, blah, like here we are.
Yeah. There's exactly. There is a moment though that took me back to the Samurai Jack style of animation where Yoda runs underneath the, droid tank, and he's got his lightsaber up, facing it, runs through, and the next shot is him kind of turned around and it falls and blows up. And that's so like that
Yeah.
felt like that was a nod to that animation style, because you always see some guy with a sword running through
And then a pause,
just
and then yeah,
right behind him.
yep.
That felt like a nod to
Yeah.
that micro series. Maybe not, but that's what I was feeling. Yeah, overall, like this episode had very little impact on the greater story at play. They're figuring out what is the Clone Wars, and
Mhm.
I think that's what this whole first season is
Is
to
setting
test.
up, yeah.
And so, yeah, look, we're not here to knock it. We're not here to say it's the worst stuff in the world. It's just right now, 54%. Like, it's watchable.
Mhm.
It's not the best Star Wars in the world.
Yeah.
It's good enough to be watched, barely,
Yeah.
but it's there. Also, the clones' dialogue felt a little clunky. They're like, I don't know, something like they're
All
like,
of
"Do you
their
know what he's
voices
saying?"
sound exactly the same too.
At this
It
point,
was like really copy paste, copy paste.
and they're like, "Do you know what this guy's saying?" He's like, I don't know. He's a Jedi. They're like, they're figuring it out, and
Yeah.
that's again,
That's part of even
it's a
just
pilot.
creating a show. Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
pilot, so we'll give it all sorts of grace here.
But I did want to say before we move on, I wrote this down. Though it is the first episode of the series, Ambush is the 5th episode chronologically, being preceded by the later episode Supply Lines and succeeded by the next episode Rising Malevolence, which is the first part of a 3-part storyline.
Yeah,
which kind of is a good segue.
Absolutely. So let's go into it. What happened in the next 3 episodes?
All right. The Malevolence arc is a 3-part story comprised of episode 2, Rising Malevolence, episode 3, Shadow of Malevolence, and episode 4, Destroy Malevolence. And that reveals that Separatists have developed a new secret ion cannon weapon that takes out Jedi Master Plo Koon and his crew of clones. Anakin, his Padawan Ahsoka, save him from the debris while Grievous, under orders of Count Dooku, moves to attack a clone hospital. Anakin makes risky moves with his squadron to take down the weapon. Darth Sidious and Count Dooku arrange for Senator Amidala and C-3PO to cross through the middle of the battle, and Grievous takes them as hostages, while Obi-Wan and Anakin have to figure out how to save them.
That was really tough to get through for me.
Yeah.
I had a tough time. What did you, before I go off, what did you think?
It's quite an adjustment to change from where we've been, even with just the Bad Batch, which was familiar to have multiple episode storylines. But this, like, did it need to be 3 episodes? Not necessarily.
Exactly
the middle one kind of felt like the middle, you
Yeah.
know. And yeah, but however, it did bring me a lot of joy to see our favorite characters back on screen again.
Yeah.
Like
That's how they're all-
Anakin,
yep.
Obi-Wan, Padme. Yeah.
And to praise that, I really do think that who plays at Matt
Lanter.
He plays Anakin. The tone, it's super, like, it's, if you've already watched it before, you've already fallen in love with that version of Anakin. And if not, I really think that even though it seemed a little bit it did seem robotic, they've really got a good job on grasping like his mannerisms here. And it's interesting how like this version of Anakin for a lot of people is like more beloved by this point. So
that'll go into my hot take later.
All right. So it's, look, I'm happy to see them. At the same time, storyline wise, I felt like it was very weak. There's a new, it is the Malevolence.
Yeah, that is Grievous's ship, is the Malevolence, and that is, they've built this like secret ion cannon.
Yeah, and I want to also praise one more thing too. In that episode, the first one, they have the cannon. You've got Plo Koon's fleet gets taken out by that ray. And it's pretty dark how instead of just like shooting you down, they go one by one and the droids rip, and they show it too. They rip the clones out of their ship and just into space. That's how, like, yeah, exactly. Bye, Felicia. Like that you're like
dark.
That's a dark way to take these guys out. And so the whole point show, and then they hint right now like, oh, we're just inconsequential, we're just a number. And Plo Koon's entire episode indicating, no, you're important, you have value. And he's like, not to me, and so that was absolutely like this. I felt like was the strongest episode, the first one of those 3, just for that reason alone. Like really showcasing, like, first time ever we've really seen Plo Koon.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, because again, I haven't seen the micro series, and I'll probably end up watching that like in the middle of this, like as we're reviewing this, just so I can have some more context. But Plo Koon doesn't have a lot of lines even in the movies. If he does have one,
I don't
he's
think there's
just
any.
again one of those like cool background characters that ended up becoming like Dave Filoni's favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he gets sort of this front facing like star action in this first arc. But I also wrote down in my notes, Plo Koon sounds like God. He has just like the perfect voice of yes. And I was also telling Jake as I was watching it, I was like, Plo Koon's kind of scary. And he was like, that's racist. He's like, he needs a mask. And I was like, but traditionally, masked figures are villains.
Yeah.
And his mask is like really interesting because it looks like it has like biomedical uses as well. What does he look like behind the mask? Why does he need the mask? Like, obviously his eyes are covered. Like, I want to know what his eyes look like. That is truly like the window to a person soul. And it's perfect. It's purposefully blocked in this character design. So I am curious by Plo Koon. Again, he sounds like God, and he has such like wisdom and care for his troop that really rang true.
Yeah. And then the rest of this episode, you have Ahsoka, who's literally just right now mini Anakin.
Yeah.
But they're, and it's funny, like you see Palpatine right now, who's the first thing he says to the Jedi when he realizes Anakin, like this is a great way to get rid of a Jedi Master. He's about to die. Just intervene. Don't let Anakin in. But it's funny, the Jedi Council, he's like going in saying, who greenlit this? Who's allowing him to be there? The Jedi Master's right then and there. She's like, why do you care?
Yeah.
Like, why are you? This is our guy. Like, and like, why with just Ahsoka alone? So at this point, like, and it's a rescue mission. He's not intervening with Grievous. So why on this mission do you care? And then he steps in to tell Anakin. Now, Anakin, would believe him a little bit more because he's showcased like I'm more than a friend. Like, I really care about you. So I could see why he would say, you need to turn around. It's over. Like, I don't want to see you get hurt. And then Ahsoka, obviously, is like, nope, I'm going to drive. We're going to go save him. And, you see that mini Anakin in her. I do want to say one more thing. Maybe this is me, and maybe I'm old fashioned. So call me out if I am.
I'd be happy to.
But I feel like it's weird that Ahsoka, who feels like an 11-year-old right now, has got this like high rise crop top feel to her where
it's not even a crop top. It is what we call a tube top, like a bandeau bra, essentially.
Which is just, it feels weird to me that you have that for essentially like, what is she, like 11, 12, 13,
14 something. Yeah, a minor.
Yeah. I just think that's weird. Maybe I'm just old fashioned. I just think that's odd.
No, it's definitely odd, and it's uncomfortable.
I think so too.
It's just so icky. Like, you could have put her in like anything, like even just like Padawan robes.
Yeah. Again, I'm like watching it with like my kid, and I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of like, that's weird. That's just me though. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of other people that are like,
no, it wasn't necessary. It's also just not practical.
Yeah.
Any person that wears tube tops will tell you that you have to keep pulling it up all the time. So who's going to go into a battle where they're like swinging their arms and stuff and they're scared that their like chest is going to pop out? So
not Ahsoka.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate decision, and I look forward to when her character gets a little bit of an upgrade. A
little more respect.
Yeah.
Put some spect on her. So
I wrote in here that the graphics, they kind of look like a sim generator, like when I think of like Sims 2, and how everything kind of feels like flat shapes that they interact with.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that they try to add texture and like brush strokes and stuff into into the design. I do think the characterizations of the characters, like how they stylize Anakin and Obi-Wan and Sidious, is really creative. Or like Dooku with his like really long face.
Yeah.
Like those caricatures are really really cool. I buy into them.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I do too.
It's just, yeah, the fluidity isn't totally there, but they're
Not yet.
trying.
And they
They're
will.
trying.
We all know they get there.
Yeah.
By the time the Bad Batch,
It
you're just
becomes
like,
so
whoa.
noticeable too. I remember, like, I think the next like upgrade in their performance happens in season 2, but like you recognize it right away. You're like, holy cow, there's like definitely an update that went through.
Yeah. So we're getting through this first season, these episodes. That first one was the best in my opinion. Still lacked left a lot to be desired. I gave it a, let's see, a 54.8.
Oh, I wanted to call
55.
out how in the music of these, it does a really good job at weaving in like the traditional John Williams like Force themes,
Mhm. Yeah.
and kind of Kevin Kiner's own like fill to it, because
Yep.
like we get the really authentic John Williams scores like being used in this, which is always a win.
And the last one, the first episode, had Yoda's theme at the
Yeah.
end. The second one, or maybe the third one, it has the Force theme played in. So
In this first episode of this arc, there's also a battle droid that's humming the Imperial March.
yeah, I thought I heard that. I was like, or at least the beginnings of it.
Yes, yeah, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, there was also like when Dooku at the beginning of the episode, as they're on the Malevolence, he's like, "You may fire when ready." I'm like, all right, cool. Little nod to
Yeah.
A New Hope, so it goes into the immersive universe. Yeah, I think outside of that though, that's our review for that second episode, which we put at a 60.30%. So moving up, not much, but unfortunately, this next episode we just destroyed at an overall
This the
44%.
wait, episode 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one was the middle one of that arc.
Oof,
and we
was
were just
rough.
like,
It dragged.
It did. So essentially, Dooku gives Grievous this order to like blow up a clone hospital because they're trying to play off of the Jedi's weakness that they like actually see their clones as important. And Anakin and his squad tries to take a shortcut, and we run into, these are called, let's see, giant space dwelling Nebrae mantas, which were these type of like Purgle type space things, which was really cool to see again because obviously big fan of Rebels. We got the Purgle nod in Mando season 3, and I had totally forgot that this species existed, but it's kind of like a nod to those future pieces.
Yep.
I also wrote that there's like random Dutch angle ? Where like sometimes like I remember Anakin and Ahsoka walking through like an area and like it's just a Dutch angle, like off tilt, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, no reason.
No reason.
Just cause.
Okay.
Yep. No, I personally just thought this episode really dragged for me. I mean, I enjoyed that not Purgle scene where they were. I thought that was cool. Like that helped with the technical aspects for me because it was neat to see. But besides that, yeah, they go in. Anakin goes in a little hot. They fail and end up, I think if I remember correctly, like they do end up disabling the ship by shooting at it, whatever. It tries to launch the weapon by the end, and it ends up kind of imploding in that area. So then Obi-Wan's fleet comes in and they're saved.
Right.
So Anakin goes in. Now it's up to them to pursue Grievous and essentially shoot him out of the sky and help, end the war sooner and shoot him out of space, I should say. So really, that's all that happened in that episode. We put out a 44%. With that, do we just go to the next one?
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
All right, cool.
But this one, I was just so excited to see Padme back on screen. Like, I just haven't seen her in so long. And then, of course, there's like the Anakin and Padme scenes, and I'm just like,
yeah. I was thinking, I'm like, does she like ever recognize how badass he is? Because like there's so many moments where he like kind of throws her into an elevator and saves her. And there's all these two battle droids he's taken out like they're butter, and the entire she sometimes won't even remark and like is like disinterested. And one time she's like, all she'll say is, "No, you've always had like every time ever since you were a little boy, you've been fascinated with droids," or something like that.
And he was like, "I used to put them together, now I take them apart."
Yeah, it's like, all right, like just like there's never any awe. She just come to expect him to be just like
But
crazy
also
awesome.
she like can't really expose her feelings. But I found it interesting that as soon as like Anakin finds out that Padme's been like taken hostage, he calls her Padme. He doesn't say Senator Amidala or Senator at any point, and he's calling her by her first name like the entire time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hello, red flag.
Yeah, Obi-Wan's choosing to look the other way at this point. Like,
okay, now that you mentioned Obi-Wan, do his eyes seem like obnoxiously light blue? They look like icy blue. I'm like, are you the what's it called, the Snow King or whatever from Game of Thrones? I was like,
no, it doesn't take me out that much.
It took me out.
No, it didn't take me out that much. Yeah, it is definitely kind of caricature. Like they'll just take a few features and they're really gonna really press into it.
Yeah.
I also, the voice actor for him, forget his name, but saw him at a celebration as well. I thought he does a great job.
Oh yeah,
playing Obi-Wan. So big fan there. But yeah, this episode overall, like pretty just not that interesting either. Like Grievous gets away, the Malevolence ends up getting destroyed because Anakin, like as they're getting ready to reactivate their hyperdrive, he has it getting the moment they reactivate it, he's gonna have it get it steered into a moon. Grievous is all pissed because now he's all of his failings over the last 3 episodes are getting reported to the Emperor. And you know, he's
now he doesn't even have a ship.
He doesn't have a ship, so he goes into hyperspace to get away from everyone and escape captivity. But that's really it. I mean, and then Anakin and Padme almost have an on-screen kiss scene.
I know, the tension.
Yeah, I guess, or something. But yeah, and that's it. So there really isn't a whole lot of a story here. So there we gave this one a 56.5. If you look at it holistically, what really happened? Clones died. And there was a ship, and now there isn't. Outside of that,
it almost was like a pre-Holdo maneuver.
Kinda. Yeah, but outside of that, they're really like consequently, when you look at it from like what happened in the greater Star Wars universe, there was not really anything that happened.
But that's kind of the point of the whole series, though. Like the Clone Wars took place over however many years, and so this series is just going to follow all of these sort of like mundane moments that hopefully get us closer to understanding why these characters turned out the way that they did.
Yep.
And I know that from a lot of people, Ahsoka gets a lot of flack in this first season for being annoying. And to that, like, you know, I'm watching this with a new set of eyes and trying to think about the other type of feedback that this show has received over the years. And I really didn't get like beyond annoying than I expected her to be. Like any child is annoying. Have you ever met a 14-year-old?
Any child is annoying.
Like they're going to be sassy. They're going to be like emotional and like, well, I know what's best, and like I think we should do this instead. And especially when your master is Anakin Skywalker, Mr. Fucking emotion. It just like it makes sense that she is the way that she is, and I think it would be inauthentic to make her like easygoing or not annoying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
she's supposed to be annoying.
And that's the whole point with her. Like, give it time. She's going to grow out of it. Like, whatever. Like, I'm not worried about that bit. What I will say though, consequently, as I said, in the overall Star Wars arc, this doesn't really do a whole lot, but also for the characters, nothing really happens either, excluding learning a bit about Plo Koon and his, love and care for all life, it seems. And
he called little Soka, and that Jake and I both looked at each other and we were like,
so at most, this should increase your, love for Plo Koon. I did hear that, I don't know if this is like true or just like someone's like take, but the clones that shoot Plo Koon out of the sky were the clones that he saved in this episode.
Shut up.
Yeah.
That is tragic. I'm going to need to take the day off work tomorrow to process that.
Oh
my God.
I know. Can you imagine if that's true? Like more so, I mean, yeah, it's like really tragic for Plo, but like think about that. If you are basically a prisoner in your own mind in that moment.
Yeah.
And then after
you realize what you've done.
You realize what you've done. You have to live with it. Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
Like, because you're gonna remember all that. Like, I would bet you most Jedi don't have good bonds with their clones. Not saying like they're like horrible evil masters, but like I bet you a lot of them are very militaristic, no attachment, whatever. But there was some like Anakin's bond with the 501st, and I don't know how. I mean, I think Obi-Wan might be a good example. I don't know if he's got a great relationship with Cody.
Yeah, I think that's always felt kind of forced by the fans.
Yeah. Like Cody shooting like Obi-Wan out of the sky. It's like, all right, like I guess boss is bad. Like,
Yeah. All right, that's a new order.
Mhm.
Also, I noticed that Anakin isn't leading the 501st. This
Right,
one, he's
yeah.
leading Shadow Squadron.
Yep.
And I was trying to pay attention and see like when we're gonna get like the first Rex moment, and he didn't appear in these first couple episodes. So I wonder when we'll get to see the 501st and Rex. I did also hear one of the voices of the clones sounded just like Tech. I don't know if you had like caught that too, or I was like, well, he tapped into that same voice again.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the clones get really copy paste in these first few episodes.
But as we know, this show, where it ends versus where it begins, it's, it just gets
definitive
better and better
Star
with
Wars.
age. Yeah. So we're not going too hard on it, but right now, I did want to say, because Clone Wars is really, it's going to be one of the most interesting pieces of Star Wars content we're going to rank, because it's so baked into arcs.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I thought would be fun, and then we'll just do this for the Clone Wars, but I thought we should also add in ranking all of the Clone Wars arcs.
Yeah.
See which is truly the best.
I like that idea.
And so right now, episode 1, like I'm not going to count anything that it's its own individual episode, but right now we have the Malevolence arc. And overall, gave it a 53.6%, which means it's watchable. It's not the best in the world, but it's watchable and enjoyable. And you guys, if you have not seen Star Wars, you should totally check it out. But that's our review of this first arc.
Yeah. Only 20,000 left.
Only 20,000 left, but it's going to be a fun ride. Well, with that, let's go into the next segment of the show. It is Hot Takes time.
Don't be too proud of this podcast you've constructed. The ability to rank content is insignificant next to the power of an exceptional hot take.
All right, it's Hot Takes time. Amanda, what is the take of the week?
So we are going to be switching up our hot take section just a little bit. We have a hard time coming up with original hot takes all the time. And so we figured, who has hot takes? All Star Wars fans have hot takes, don't they? There is no shortage of them to go around. So we are going to be sourcing hot takes from the internet about Star Wars, and using that as like our jumping ground to discuss whether or not we agree with it or not. So that way it's not something that we feel like we have to personally be convicted to share, but we can still have a good discussion.
We have almost done 100 episodes. Like, how many hot takes
do
we
need to source some more.
We're normal-ish people.
Yeah.
We've only got so much to say.
Yeah. And it also takes the heat off of us. So it's not like, wow, Brody said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the hot take that I'm sharing tonight comes from Frosty Mac on Twitter. And his hot take is, the Clone Wars is a great Star Wars show that also has an Anakin who is just fundamentally not compatible with the Anakin Skywalker who is present in the prequel films, to the detriment of both the show and the movies. So you kind of talked about that. And I do want to follow it up. There was like a really nice discussion on the thread of that Twitter post, and someone agreed, like, true, but I'm fine with it because the Clone Wars version is way better. And Frosty Mac responded, I think it's up to interpretation. Movie Anakin is less entertaining, but a more realistic portrayal of what someone who would eventually become Darth Vader might be like, an emotionally stunted man with a good heart, but one that burns too harshly, causing him to lock it away. Whereas TV Anakin tends to let his heart take him where it pleases, which makes his path to Vaderhood a bit harder to mentally justify, but is nonetheless a great character.
That's a well thought out argument.
Yeah.
Where do you stand with that?
I totally get it, because when I look at this Anakin, I have such fond memories and love, and that like immediately as I saw him and Padme together, I'm like, oh look, everything's great. Like this is a different reality where like Anakin is actually a good guy, you know? But that's not the case. Like he's still the same person, obviously. But I think they're both valid. I think it wouldn't be a kids show so much if Anakin didn't have a little more like spontaneity and charisma in this version of him.
Yeah. I think that's true. I mean, overall, when it comes to which Anakin I like more, it is undoubtedly the Matt Lanter Anakin.
Less
As
creepy.
yeah, he's less creepy. You see, for me, drive and ego. And I think that to me justifies like, oh, this is very clearly why someone would tiptoe into the path of being, a Sith Lord. Because yes, he's got this, we see it right here. He's got this love affair with Padme going on. So he's got that going for him. We know he's trying to climb the ranks. We know he's a pretty haughty individual. And, even that line where he's like, I used to build him. No, I take him apart. Like, very prideful individual. And so, it makes more sense when you see him getting rejected positions that he believes he deserves, how that could trigger anger. I don't think it at all translates well from one character to the next because obviously they're so different in character. So, but you can understand why from his take, why he'd be so mad.
Yeah.
And why even that alone without Padme would be enough for maybe him to consider leaving like Dooku did with all sorts of like the failures of the Jedi. And that's what the Clone Wars does so well with, spoiler alert, don't listen if you haven't seen the Clone Wars yet, but with Ahsoka leaving, with all the events of not being able to be with Padme, with rejections to promotions, and with seeing the flaws of the Jedi Order that they showcase in this series, it all makes sense, and he executes it so well. The writing does everything that Matt Lanter's vocal performances. They get a lot better with the digital effects and animation.
And also just like the style of how Anakin is styled and they're like his hair. I don't know what it is, but he just like is Anakin for me.
Yeah.
So much. Also, I don't know if it was the same for you, but I was distracted by Padme's butt.
What? No, I was not.
It seemed like they wanted it to be distracting, but I didn't know if that stood out to you.
Nope, I can honestly say it did not come up. But hey, I'm glad that you
respectfully, I was looking.
All right, there you go. Good for you. I don't know. Overall, I think Anakin's a great character.
Do you think it's a hot take that Anakin is not compatible? Well, hold on. Let's look at this again. Star Wars is a great show that also has an Anakin who's just fundamentally not compatible with Anakin presented in the prequel films, to the detriment of both the shows.
That's the part that's interesting there, to the detriment of both properties, them film and TV
because
series.
they couldn't sort of figure out one or the other.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, as he said there, it's a fantastic character, and he said it both times, to the detriment of either. I just disagree. I think Anakin in the show is one thing, Anakin in the movies is something else, and it's honestly, I kind of like that there's a little bit of differentiation there because there is a different voice actor and everything else, but it still feels like it's playing within a very safe box for that character to be in. So no, if anything, I think it makes it richer. I don't think it's a detriment to one to the other. I think it was a well articulated, thought out hot take.
Yeah.
I just don't happen to agree.
I agree that it's a hot take. But I disagree that it's for the detriment.
Yep. I'm with you. All right. Well, username, I don't remember, but hey.
Frosty Mac,
thank you for putting that online. Unfortunately, this one, we disagree this week, but there's always next week.
I got a bad feeling about this hot take.
And as it stands right now, this week, that's our show. We are going to be adding another segment as time goes on. You may notice if you've been listening for a long time now, trivia time is not here
Yeah.
in the show. If you really love it, write it to us. We may bring it back. But for now, we're going to be introducing a new segment in a few weeks here that we're really excited about. Don't know what we're going to call it yet, but we've got some really, really, I don't know, good feelings about it.
Yeah.
I got a good feeling about this. So I think we'll jump back into it at that point. But otherwise, Amanda, anything else we want to talk about with the beginning of the Clone Wars before we wrap this show up?
No, I think we covered it all.
That's it. All right, folks. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, go to dueltheranks.com. We've got everything there. We're on TikTok, Instagram, all those places, and Twitter at Duel the Ranks. So go listen there. Otherwise, we'll be back next week.
Nope.
I think. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Not next week. We're taking a break. We're moving the studio from one place to another. So that's happening. But when we do come back, I think we're just going to be breaking down just episode 5. I think.
Nice.
Yeah, so it'll be nice to give that one some love and dive into it. But that's this week's episode of Duel the Ranks. Thanks so much for listening in, and we look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. Take care.